I never thought a simple family DNA test would destroy everything I believed about my life. But when my 8-year-old daughter stood up in that room full of relatives and handed our family lawyer a mysterious envelope, I knew our world was about to change forever. It was supposed to be fun. You know those Ancestry DNA kits everyone's obsessed with? I thought it would be the perfect way to bring our family together after 2 years of awkward silences and cold shoulders. My name is Maya Brooks, and I'm 42 years old. I work in marketing, I'm divorced, and I've spent my entire life feeling like I don't quite fit anywhere, especially in my own family. The person who always made me feel like I belonged was my late husband, Marcus. He died of a sudden heart attack 2 years ago, leaving me to raise our daughter Zoe alone. Zoe is 8 now, and she's got this quiet wisdom that sometimes catches me off guard. She was always Daddy's little helper, and even now she carries around this worn backpack filled with what she calls Daddy's important things. My mother, Carol, is 68, a retired teacher who has always been the family matriarch. She's got this way of making you feel small without even trying. She's been especially distant since Marcus died, like she's building walls I can't climb over. Then there's my Uncle Victor, who's 65 and never misses a chance to remind me that I'm different from the rest of the family. He's got money, he's got opinions, and he's never been shy about sharing either. When I planned this DNA reveal party, I invited our family lawyer, Nathan Reed, to witness everything. There had been some questions about inheritance after Marcus passed, and I thought having everything official might help smooth things over. Nathan has been our family attorney for years, and he knew Marcus better than almost anyone. I spent weeks preparing for this day. I made charts, bought special envelopes for everyone's results, and even prepared a simple family tree that Zoe could understand. I wanted her to feel connected to her heritage, to understand where she came from. I had no idea that everything I thought I knew about where I came from was a lie. Looking back now, I should have noticed the signs. The way my mother's hands shook when she opened her DNA kit. The way Uncle Victor kept making jokes about how I was going to find out I was adopted. The way my 8-year-old daughter clutched that backpack tighter every time someone mentioned family secrets. But I was so focused on bringing everyone together, on healing the rifts that had grown wider since Marcus died, that I missed all the warning signs. I thought I was planning a celebration. Instead, I was setting the stage for the biggest revelation of my life. What I didn't know was that my precious little girl had been carrying the key to our family's darkest secret for 2 whole years. Marcus had trusted her with something so explosive that it would shatter 3 generations of carefully constructed lies, and she had been waiting, with the patience only a child can have, for exactly the right moment to reveal it. That moment came when the DNA results showed I shared 0% genetic material with the people who raised me. When Uncle Victor looked at me with that cruel smile and said I didn't belong, when my mother stared at the floor like she couldn't bear to look at me, that's when my 8-year-old daughter became the bravest person in the room. She stood up, reached into that backpack, and pulled out an envelope that would change everything we thought we knew about our family. When she handed it to Nathan Reed, I saw something in his eyes that terrified me. He knew what was coming. Somehow he had been waiting for this moment too. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and sealed with the kind of care that comes from handling something precious and dangerous. As Nathan's hands trembled, opening it, as his face went completely white reading the contents, I realized that my husband had orchestrated this entire moment from beyond the grave. He had known this day would come. He had prepared our 8-year-old daughter to be the keeper of a truth so powerful it would rewrite our entire family history. And he had trusted her completely, to know exactly when and how to reveal it. In that moment, watching my little girl stand there with such quiet determination, I knew that whatever was in that envelope would either destroy us or set us free. There was no going back. The truth was finally going to come out, and it was going to come from the most unexpected source imaginable. My 8-year-old daughter was about to become the hero of a story I didn't even know we were living. Growing up, I always felt like I was living someone else's life. While my mother, Carol, had these striking green eyes and auburn hair that caught the light just right, I had boring brown hair and hazel eyes that never seemed to match anything. My father, Marcus, used to joke that I got the mystery genes, but it never felt like a joke to me. It felt like a constant reminder that I didn't quite belong. Carol was the kind of mother who corrected your posture at the dinner table and made sure your homework was perfect before you could watch television. She taught third grade for 35 years, and sometimes I felt like she was still teaching me lessons I couldn't quite grasp. There was always this distance between us, like she was looking at me through glass. When other mothers would brag about their daughters, Carol would smile politely and change the subject. Uncle Victor made sure I never forgot how different I was. At every family gathering, he'd make his little comments. "Maya's got her own unique style, doesn't she?" Or, "Well, Maya's always been the creative one in the family." But the way he said it made creativity sound like a character flaw. He'd ruffle my hair and call me the family's wild card, and everyone would laugh like it was endearing. It never felt endearing to me. The only person who made me feel completely accepted was Marcus. From the moment we met in college, he had this way of looking at me like I was exactly who I was supposed to be. He never questioned why I was so different from my family, never made me feel like I needed to fit into some predetermined mold. When we got married, he used to say that he fell in love with my independence, my ability to think outside the family box. Marcus was the bridge between me and my family. He could make Carol laugh in ways I never could. He'd spend hours listening to Uncle Victor's business stories without rolling his eyes. He made family gatherings bearable because he genuinely enjoyed people in a way that came naturally to him, but felt impossible for me. When Zoe was born 8 years ago, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe having a grandchild would soften Carol's edges, make her warmer toward me, and it did to some extent. She adored Zoe from the moment she was born, but even then, I noticed how she'd comment on Zoe's features. "She has Marcus's eyes," she'd say, or "She definitely got the Brooks nose from her father's side." Never anything that connected Zoe to my side of the family. Marcus noticed it too, though he never said anything directly. Instead, he made sure Zoe knew she was special exactly as she was. He'd take her on these little adventures, just the two of them, and they'd come back with inside jokes and shared secrets. Zoe worshipped her father, and he treated her like she was the most important person in his world. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came 2 years ago, on a Tuesday morning in March. Marcus collapsed at work, and by the time I got to the hospital, he was already gone. Massive heart attack at 45 years old. No warning, no symptoms, no chance to say goodbye. One day, he was making Zoe pancakes in the shape of butterflies, and the next day, he was gone. That's when the real distance with my family started. Carol grieved Marcus like she had lost her own son, which I understood. But she also seemed to retreat from me completely, like losing him had severed the only connection we'd ever really had. Uncle Victor stopped making his little jokes about me being different. Instead, he just looked at me with this expression I couldn't read, like he was waiting for something. The inheritance issues started almost immediately. There were questions about some property Marcus owned, some investments he'd made, and a trust fund he'd set up for Zoe. Nothing dramatic, but enough legal complexity that Nathan Reed suggested we might need to clarify some family relationships for the paperwork. That's when Carol made her first strange comment. "Some things are better left alone," she said, when Nathan mentioned the possibility of genetic testing to establish clear lineage for the trust. "Marcus handled all of that. We don't need to dig into ancient history." But Zoe was struggling without her father, and I was desperate to find ways to connect our small family to something bigger. When those Ancestry DNA kits went on sale last Christmas, I thought they'd be perfect. We could learn about our heritage, maybe find some distant relatives, give Zoe a sense of belonging to something larger than just the two of us. I should have paid more attention to how quiet Zoe got when I mentioned the DNA tests. She'd been carrying that backpack everywhere since Marcus died, claiming it held Daddy's important papers, but I figured it was just her way of staying close to his memory. I never imagined that inside that worn backpack was the key to understanding why I'd spent 42 years feeling like a stranger in my own family. The morning of the DNA reveal party, as I set up Carol's living room with charts and notebooks, I felt hopeful for the first time in months. Finally, we were going to have some answers. Finally, I was going to understand where I fit in this family tree. I had no idea that by the end of the day, I'd discover I didn't fit in it at all. The atmosphere in Carol's living room felt festive when we started. I had arranged chairs in a circle, placed everyone's sealed DNA results on the coffee table, and even brought colored pens so we could chart our family connections together. Zoe sat cross-legged on the carpet with her ever-present backpack beside her, coloring in a family tree template I'd made specially for her. "This is going to be so much fun," I announced, trying to inject enthusiasm into the room. "We might even find some famous relatives or discover we're related to royalty." Uncle Victor chuckled and picked up his envelope. "Well, let's see what secrets the Winters family DNA holds." He tore it open with theatrical flair, scanning the results quickly. "Irish and German, just like we expected. 47% match with Carol here. Perfect siblings, as advertised." Carol opened hers next, and her hands were steadier than I'd expected. "Same here. 73% Irish, 22% German, 5% Mystery European." She looked at the DNA matches section. "Oh, look, I match with Cousin Betty in Ohio. Haven't heard from her in years." Nathan Reed sat quietly in the corner, his briefcase at his feet, looking more like he was attending a business meeting than a family celebration. I'd asked him to witness the results officially for the trust paperwork, but now his formal presence felt oddly heavy in the cheerful room. "Mommy, what does DNA mean again?" Zoe looked up from her coloring, purple crayon poised in her small hand. "It's like a recipe that makes you who you are, sweetheart. Everyone gets half their recipe from their mommy and half from their daddy, and it goes back through all the grandparents and great-grandparents. So my recipe comes from you and Daddy?" "Exactly, and my recipe comes from Grandma Carol and Grandpa Marcus." I gestured toward Carol, who was still studying her results with unusual intensity. Uncle Victor leaned forward in his chair. "Maya, aren't you going to open yours? We're all dying to see what exotic places the mystery genes came from." There was something in his tone that made me pause, but I attributed it to his usual tendency towards sarcasm. I picked up my envelope, noting how official it looked with the laboratory's seal and my full name printed across the front. "Here goes nothing." I tore it open and pulled out the thick packet of papers. The ancestry breakdown was on top, and immediately I could see this wasn't going to match what I expected. Instead of Irish and German heritage, my results showed 62% Scandinavian, 31% Eastern European, and 7% Baltic. Not a single percentage point matched what Carol and Victor had just shared. "That's strange," I murmured, flipping to the DNA matches page. My stomach started to twist as I scanned the list of potential relatives. None of the names were familiar. More importantly, when I looked for Carol's name in my matches, it wasn't there at all. "What's strange?" Carol's voice was barely above a whisper. I checked the paperwork again, thinking there must be some mistake. "Mom, according to this, we don't share any DNA. That can't be right. Let me see your results again." Victor was now sitting on the edge of his chair, and I noticed his expression had changed completely. The jovial uncle persona was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like anticipation. I spread both papers out on the coffee table, comparing the numbers systematically. Carol showed as Irish and German. I showed as Scandinavian and Eastern European. In the DNA matches section, we had zero overlap. According to these scientific results, we were complete strangers. "There has to be an error," I said, my voice getting higher. "These tests make mistakes sometimes, right?" "Maybe they mixed up the samples." The room had gone completely quiet except for the sound of Zoe's crayon moving across her paper. Even she seemed to sense the tension building around the adults. Uncle Victor set down his results and looked directly at me with an expression I'd never seen before. His voice was cold and deliberate when he spoke. "Well, I guess that settles it once and for all. You really don't belong in this family, do you, Maya?" The words hit like a physical blow. "What did you say?" "I said you don't belong. The DNA doesn't lie, sweetheart. You're not a Winters, and you never were." Zoe stopped coloring and looked up at her uncle with confusion, written across her 8-year-old face. "Uncle Victor, why are you being mean to my mommy?" Carol was staring at the floor like she was trying to disappear into it. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. I felt my entire world shifting beneath me. 42 years of feeling different, of not quite fitting in, of wondering why I was the odd one out in every family photo suddenly made a horrible kind of sense. "Mom," my voice was shaking now. "Mom, look at me. What's going on? There has to be a mistake with these tests." Carol lifted her head just enough to meet my eyes, and what I saw there terrified me. It wasn't surprise or confusion, it was resignation, like she'd been waiting for this moment for decades. "There's no mistake," she whispered. That's when Zoe stood up. My small, quiet daughter rose from her spot on the carpet with a determination that seemed far too adult for her age. She was clutching her backpack against her chest, and her voice was steady in a way that made everyone in the room turn to look at her. "Daddy told me something important before he went to heaven." The entire room froze when Zoe spoke. My 8-year-old daughter, who'd been quietly coloring just moments before, was now standing in the center of our family circle, with the kind of composure that made my heart race. She hugged her backpack tighter against her small chest, and I could see her father's determination in the set of her jaw. "What did Daddy tell you, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice gentle despite the chaos spinning in my head. Zoe looked around the room at each adult face, her young eyes taking in Uncle Victor's cruel smirk, Carol's guilty posture, and Nathan Reed's increasingly uncomfortable expression. When she spoke, her words were careful and precise, like she'd been rehearsing them. "Daddy said that sometimes grown-ups keep secrets because they think it will protect people they love. But he said secrets can hurt people too, especially when they make someone feel like they don't belong." My breath caught. Marcus had been preparing our daughter for this moment, somehow knowing that one day the truth about our family would come crashing down around us. "He gave me something very important to keep safe," Zoe continued, unzipping her backpack with deliberate movements. "He said if there was ever a day when people got confused about our family, or if Mommy looked really sad and scared about where she came from, I should give this to Mr. Nathan." She pulled out a large manila envelope, thick with papers and sealed with tape that had yellowed slightly with age. Across the front, in Marcus's familiar handwriting, were the words, "For Maya, when the truth can no longer wait." Nathan Reed stood up abruptly, his face pale. "Zoe, sweetheart, are you sure your daddy wanted you to give that to me today?" Zoe nodded solemnly. "He made me promise super hard. He said you're the person who helps families with important papers and that you'd know what to do with Daddy's truth." I stared at the envelope in my daughter's small hands, feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Everything in my life had led to this moment, and I knew that whatever was inside that envelope would either destroy me or finally set me free. "Maya, perhaps we should discuss this privately," Nathan said, his lawyer instincts kicking in, without Zoe present. "No." The word came out stronger than I felt. Zoe has been carrying this burden for 2 years. She's been braver than any of us, and she deserves to see this through. Carol suddenly came alive, panic flooding her voice. "Maya, please, think about what you're doing. Some things are better left buried. Think about Zoe. Think about what this could do to her." But I looked at my daughter, who had spent 24 months keeping her father's secret with the patience and wisdom that sometimes only children possess, and I knew she was stronger than any of us had given her credit for. "Zoe," I said, kneeling down to her eye level, "are you absolutely sure Daddy wanted you to do this today?" She nodded without hesitation. "He said I would know the right time because you would look lost and sad, and people would be saying mean things about you not belonging. He said when that happened, I should be brave and help our family find the truth." Uncle Victor leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from cruel amusement to something closer to concern. "Maya, maybe your mother's right. Maybe some stones are better left unturned." "Are you kidding me?" I stood up, anger finally overriding my fear. "You just told me I don't belong in this family. You've spent my entire life making me feel like an outsider, and now you want me to ignore the one chance I have to understand why?" I turned to Nathan, my decision crystallizing. "Take the envelope. Whatever Marcus left for me, whatever he trusted our 8-year-old daughter to carry for 2 years, I need to know what it is." Nathan hesitated, looking between me and Carol. "Maya, as your attorney, I have to warn you that some revelations can't be undone. Once we open this, there's no going back." "There's already no going back," I said. gesturing to the DNA results scattered across the coffee table. According to science, I'm not related to anyone in this room except Zoe. I've spent 42 years feeling like I don't fit anywhere, and my husband apparently knew why. I deserve to know the truth. Zoe walked over to Nathan and held out the envelope. Mr. Nathan, Daddy said you're the kindest grown-up he knew, and that you'd help Mommy understand everything even when it's scary. Nathan took the envelope with trembling hands. I could see him reading Marcus's handwriting on the front, and something in his expression told me he had been expecting this moment too. Daddy also said, Zoe added, returning to stand beside me and slipping her small hand into mine, that families are made of love, not just DNA. He said that's the most important thing to remember when the truth comes out. I squeezed my daughter's hand, drawing strength from her unwavering faith in her father's plan. Whatever was in that envelope, whatever truth Marcus had hidden for decades, we were going to face it together. Nathan broke the seal, and I held my breath as he began to read. Nathan's hands visibly shook as he pulled the first document from the envelope. His eyes widened as he scanned the page, and I watched the color drain completely from his face. He looked up at me, then at Carol, then back down at the papers with an expression of complete shock. Maya, I think you should sit down for this, he said quietly. Just tell me what it says, I demanded, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Nathan took a deep breath and held up the first document. This is a hospital record from St. Mary's Hospital, dated 42 years and 3 months ago. It shows that Carol Winters gave birth to a daughter who lived for only 6 hours due to severe heart defects. The room went dead silent. Carol let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. That can't be right, I whispered. I'm here, I'm alive. Nathan pulled out the second document, his voice becoming more clinical as he continued. This is an unofficial adoption placement record, also from 42 years ago. It shows that 3 days after Carol's biological daughter died, a baby girl was placed in the Winters household through a private arrangement. The biological parents were listed as Jennifer and Thomas Larson, ages 19 and 21, who died in a car accident when the baby was 6 months old. I felt like the ground was disappearing beneath me. Are you saying I'm adopted? Not legally, Nathan said grimly, pulling out a third document. This appears to be a confession letter written by Marcus, and it's dated just 2 months before his death. He cleared his throat and began reading Marcus's familiar handwriting aloud. To my beloved Maya, if you are hearing this, it means the truth has finally come to light. I'm so sorry that I kept this from you for so long, but Carol's mental health was so fragile after losing her biological daughter that I was afraid the truth would destroy her completely. Zoe squeezed my hand tighter as Nathan continued reading. The baby who was placed with Carol and me was you, Maya. Your biological parents, Jennifer and Thomas Larson, were young college students who died in a car accident when you were 6 months old. Jennifer's mother, Helen Larson, has been searching for you for over 40 years. The adoption was arranged privately by a social worker who knew Carol was grieving, but it was never made legal. Carol was so deep in her depression that she could barely function, and I was terrified of losing her too. Carol was crying now, her hands covering her face. I tried to love you, she sobbed. I tried so hard, but every time I looked at you, I was reminded of the baby I lost. You deserved so much better than what I could give you. Nathan pulled out another document. This is a letter from Helen Larson, your biological grandmother. She's been working with private investigators for decades trying to find you. According to this, she's 89 years old and lives in Minnesota. My mind was reeling. A grandmother I'd never known existed. Biological parents who died when I was a baby. A mother who had been grieving her own lost child for 42 years. Everything suddenly made terrible, perfect sense. There's more, Nathan said, his voice gentler now. He pulled out a photograph and handed it to me. It was a picture of a young woman with my exact hair color and facial structure, holding a baby. On the back, someone had written, Jennifer and Maya, age 3 months. I stared at the photograph, seeing my own features reflected in this stranger who was my biological mother. For the first time in my life, I was looking at someone who looked like me. Daddy knew all of this? Zoe asked, her 8-year-old mind trying to process the enormity of what we'd just learned. Nathan nodded and pulled out the final document. Marcus wrote a separate letter for you, Zoe. He wanted you to understand why he asked you to keep this secret. He read from a shorter piece of paper. My brave little Zoe, by the time you read this, you'll understand that families are complicated. Your mommy never knew she was adopted because we were trying to protect everyone's feelings. But secrets can hurt people, and your mommy deserves to know who she really is. You are the bridge between the old secrets and the new truth. Thank you for being strong enough to help our family heal. Uncle Victor, who had been silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke. Maya, I owe you an apology. I always knew something was different, but I never knew what. I should never have made you feel unwelcome. I looked around the room at these people who had raised me, realizing that their distance hadn't been rejection but grief, guilt, and fear. Carol had been mourning her biological daughter while trying to love someone else's child. Marcus had been protecting everyone while carrying the weight of this enormous secret. I have a grandmother, I said quietly, the reality finally sinking in. I have biological family who's been looking for me. Zoe tugged on my hand. Mommy, does this mean we get more family to love? Through my tears, I realized my wise little daughter had just asked the most important question of all. The silence that followed Nathan's final words felt like the entire universe had shifted on its axis. I sat there holding a photograph of my biological mother, a woman I'd never known existed, while my 8-year-old daughter squeezed my hand with the kind of strength that only comes from pure love. Carol was the first to break the silence. She walked over to where I was sitting and knelt down in front of me, her eyes red with tears, but clearer than I'd seen them in years. Maya, I need you to know that your father Marcus loved you from the moment you came into our lives. He was the one who insisted we keep you, who fought for you when I was too broken to fight for anything. I was drowning in grief, and I let that grief poison the way I treated you for 42 years. That's on me, not on you. I looked at this woman who had raised me, seeing her clearly for the first time. She wasn't the cold, distant mother I'd always perceived. She was a woman who had lost her biological child and had been given someone else's baby to love, but had never properly grieved that loss or learned how to separate her pain from her love for me. I understand now why I never felt like I belonged, I said quietly. But Carol, you did love me. Maybe not the way I needed, but you kept me safe. You raised me. That counts for something. Uncle Victor stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his back to all of us. When he finally turned around, I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Shame. Maya, I've been cruel to you your entire life because I knew something was different. And instead of being curious or compassionate, I used it as a weapon. I made you feel like an outsider because it made me feel superior somehow. I'm ashamed of the man I've been to you. Nathan carefully gathered all the documents back into the envelope. Maya, there's contact information for Helen Larson in here, your biological grandmother. According to Marcus's notes, she's been hoping for this day for over 40 years. The thought of having a grandmother who had actually been searching for me, who wanted to know me, felt overwhelming and wonderful at the same time. Zoe, who had been listening to everything with the remarkable patience children sometimes possess, tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, are you sad or happy? I pulled my daughter onto my lap, marveling at how this little person had carried such an enormous secret with such grace. I'm both, sweetheart. I'm sad that Daddy had to keep this secret for so long, and I'm sad that Grandma Carol was hurting for so many years. But I'm happy that we finally know the truth, and I'm happy that we might have more family to love. Daddy was really smart, Zoe said matter-of-factly. He knew exactly when I should give the envelope to Mr. Nathan. She was right. Marcus had orchestrated this entire revelation with the kind of precision that only comes from deep love and understanding. He'd known that the DNA tests would eventually reveal the truth, and he'd prepared our daughter to be the bridge between the painful past and the hopeful future. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the Minneapolis airport with Zoe, waiting for our flight home after meeting Helen Larson for the first time. My biological grandmother was everything I'd hoped for and more. She was warm, funny, and looked so much like me that Zoe kept giggling and pointing out our similarities. Helen had shown us photo albums full of my biological parents, told us stories about their short but happy life together, and cried with joy at finally meeting the granddaughter she'd never stopped believing she'd find. "Mommy," Zoe said as we waited to board, "I think Daddy would be really proud of us." "Why's that, baby?" "Because we were brave enough to learn the truth, and we didn't let it make us mean to people. We just got more love." She was right. Carol and I were working on building a new relationship based on honesty instead of unspoken grief. Uncle Victor had started calling regularly, genuinely trying to make amends for decades of thoughtless cruelty. Helen had become the grandmother I'd always wished for, and Zoe had gained a great-grandmother who spoiled her with the enthusiasm of someone making up for lost time. Most importantly, I finally understood why I'd spent my whole life feeling like I didn't quite fit. It wasn't because there was something wrong with me. It was because I'd been trying to fit into a story that wasn't mine, carrying the weight of someone else's grief without understanding why. Marcus had given me the greatest gift imaginable. He'd trusted our 8-year-old daughter with the key to my freedom. Through her innocent courage, he'd shown me that family isn't just about DNA or blood relations. It's about the people who choose to love you, protect you, and fight for your happiness even when it's difficult. The truth had hurt, but it had also set me free. And sometimes, that's exactly what love looks like. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below about your own family discoveries, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that remind us we're not alone in this complicated, beautiful journey called life.